This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to The Express, this edition of it. And EW, I love that ragtime stuff you were playing. That, of course, is the show that precedes us. Welcome, everybody, and especially to Randy out there. And I hope my buddy Randy McCluskey is also listening. We've got a really great show for you tonight. Eric Streit is going to be joining us. He's a 20-year veteran as a producer in Hollywood of some of the top reality shows that have been on television over the last 10 to 15 years. As I said, he's a 20-year veteran of being in Hollywood. We're going to get into what it's like to be a producer. But before we get to that, EW, good evening to you, sir.
Hello.
Just hello?
Well, yeah, I had to quickly adjust the dial.
Oh, okay. By the way, please keep your finger off the red button.
Uh-huh.
Hey, your San Antonio Spurs are going to be here tomorrow night to play the Orlando Magic, and unless the Spurs sit everybody down, I anticipate a big victory for you guys. So I'm looking forward. I'm going to be at the game, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Spurs beat up on the Magic, which is what everybody's been doing lately. I guess they're going to tank the season to try to see how high up the draft pick they can possibly get. But before we get to that, let everybody know how they can get a hold of some of the TMV gear, as well as your book on Kindle.
Actually, I'd rather just tell them about the TMV Cafe radio app you can get for free on Google Play. Just simply go there and download it. You can listen to the shows live wherever you go from the app. Yes, you can actually do that. And, of course, in the book that he's mentioning is the forgot my own book.
Got your own book there, EW.
Really. Crime Scene Confidential. It is available on Amazon Kindle for 99 cents, or you can buy it in print. But it is a novella series that will keep you on the edge of your seat and guessing and wanting more. Then you can also get the TMV Cafe gear by going to the website. Simply do the drop-down of the library tab and go to TMV Gear and get the Express coffee mug or any of the other wonderful gear that's there. And that's what all the wonderful things we have available.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the gear and I love the mug. Now, you prefer the silver one, do you not? The brushed silver?
It's the brushed the brushed metal one. Yeah, that one I really like versus the white plastic exterior.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to get to that. Joining us now, of course, is my guest for the night, Mr. Eric Streit. As I said, he's a 20-year veteran of reality television as a producer. He's worked on shows such as Animal Planet's Gator Boys, Snake Men of Appalachia, and Tanked for the TLC Network. He's produced over 189-ish episodes of Little People, Big World. I've seen the show numerous times, as well as the critically acclaimed D.U.I. and Intervention for A&E. But he is about to launch, along with a number of other producers. He's one of the executive producers on a new show called New Girls on the Block, which will showcase the lives of transgender friends in Kansas City, and it will debut on the Discovery Life channel in just about a week or so. Eric, welcome to The Express.
Great to talk to you. How are you tonight, Gary?
I'm doing fine, sir. It's been a while since we touched base. I have a message for you from Miss Vicky. She says to say hello to you. She's a little under the weather with some allergies, but I hope she's listening tonight because she absolutely positively thinks you are the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Well, Vicky had a very big impact on my life at a very important time before I jumped right into reality television, and I hope you're feeling better and doing well out there, Vicky.
Well, I know she is. You know, as I was going through some of the things on your bio, and of course, the 20 questions that we went over, we're going to talk about tonight. One of the things I didn't realize about you is you had the opportunity to work with Dr. Phil McGraw on his show as a field director. That had to be a hoot to work with that man.
You know, it was absolutely one of the best things I've done in my career. I was started with the Dr. Phil show very early on, toward the end of season 1, and I was lucky enough to work for the show for about 3.5, almost 4 years, and I was actually the director of his first primetime special as well. So I had a really nice run with Dr. Phil and enjoyed it tremendously.
A lot of people always ask whoever watched the show, why does his wife there show after show after show? And I said, well, I'm not sure, but since I'm gonna I'm going to ask you. You can decline to answer because there may not even be a logical answer. But why is Robin there? I mean, he's a nice-looking guy and all that, but I don't think women are falling at their feet like they do for Tom Jones or Engelbert. So, do you have an answer to that? I know it's completely out of left field, but
no, it's exactly the opposite of what most people might think. Robin is there in the front row of the Dr. Phil show every day because Phil wants her there. He feels a lot of comfort and a lot of balance. And, she's there. She's his wife. She loves him, and he loves her. And she's there to support him. And I think just having her in the audience just really helps him focus and do his best.
One last question, and then we're going to move on to you. Is he as pragmatic off camera as I think he is?
Dr. Phil, the one thing I absolutely loved about working for Dr. Phil, Dr. Phil, what you see is what you get. He is who he is, on camera and off camera. That is who he is. And I enjoyed every minute of the 3.5 years I was there.
It's an interesting show. I catch it from time to time, and boy, he's right on. Let's get to you, Eric. What was it about show business that got you interested in it, and who introduced you to it, and have you been able to track them down and shoot them yet?
From a very early age, Gary, I literally remember being in my crib. So I was probably in the age range of 2.5 to 3.5 years old. And I remember being in bed at night and hearing the theme show of the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. And I would struggle to pull myself out of my baby bed so I could crawl on the floor down to the family room and see what that music and what that laughter was all about. And I saw Johnny Carson, and I wanted to be that guy. And I never really wavered from it. I always knew I wanted to work in television, and I that's all I ever really wanted to do. So, and that's from my earliest memories are wrapped up in that.
Yeah. I sort of ended up being in this business because I'm not capable really of doing much of anything else except talk. So, it's a great way to make a living if you can make a living talking, and you're doing it, and to a certain degree, I guess I do that as well, and I love every minute of it. I know that getting to where you are, being a producer in Hollywood for 20 years, is not an easy ladder to climb. Every step of the way, you have to jump through hoops, sometimes 3 and 4 hoops at a time. People are constantly ready to, and I remember Hollywood very, very well. I know that you have people that are after your job left and right, people who even claim to be your friends. Let everybody out there know what it is like to try to get to be where you are, and some of the ups and downs that you've had to, without mentioning any names, that you've had to go through in order to become a producer as successful as you are with a lot of these different shows. And by the way, I just touched on some of the shows that you've produced over the years and the success that you've had. And I know it's not easy. So if you could just let people know, tell the story of how you got where you are, the hoops you had to go through, and how dedicated you have to be to get where you are at this point in your life.
Well, I grew up in Paducah, Kentucky, and it shouldn't be a surprise that there's not a lot of show business opportunities in Paducah, Kentucky. So I signed up for the Navy. And I had very few, a little bit of community theater, and that's about it. Yeah. So I joined the Navy when I was 16 years old. I signed up. I went to boot camp when I was 17. I stayed in the Navy 4.5 years, traveled the world aboard different Navy ships, and that is where I really, I think, laid the foundation for my entertainment career, because I learned how to follow orders whether I agree with them or not. There's a lot of humility that comes with being a lower enlisted man in the United States Navy. You have to do all the back-breaking, menial hard work that no one else wants to do. And, while you follow orders, you don't necessarily have to follow the rules. And the most successful sailors are the ones who can figure out how to work the system. So when I got out of the Navy, I knew that I wanted to go to Hollywood and be in show business and get in television. But I thought, I'm going to go to Orlando, Florida first, and I'm going to find the most unobtrusive job I can find so I can just watch and learn. And I started out as an extra, doing, extra work at whatever shows were shooting in Orlando at the time. Sequest, Thunder in Paradise, any show, $45 a day. And I took every job opportunity that came my way. And I thought it was good to spend, 3 years in a secondary market, learn set etiquette, and make all of my really stupid mistakes in a place where no one would really notice me. And I think the trick is just don't give up. Just look for there's always opportunity there, and you just have to know that what opportunity is disguised as really hard, back-breaking, menial work.
When you got to Los Angeles, what was the atmosphere like for you compared to your travels throughout the world? Because show business is an entirely different world than what most people live in, or even what being in the military is. And how did you manage to gravitate yourself and around to the point where you started to get noticed for the good work that you were doing, and who helped you along the way? Who were some of your mentors?
Man. I signed up when I got to Hollywood. I did not know a soul. I had a little bit of money saved, less than $3,000. Showed up in Hollywood in April of 1995. 20 years ago, really almost to the day. April 18th, I think it'll be 20 years. And I signed up for a temp agency. And I knew no one. I knew nothing about show business. Other than what I'd learned as an extra in Orlando. Mm-hmm. And I signed up I made sure that I went and signed up for a temp agency in Beverly Hills because I thought I would have a better chance of getting work for producers there. And I got a job. The temp agency ended up setting me up on a hidden camera show. They set me up as a mark on a hidden camera show that was Playboy's The Really Naked Truth.
Oh yes.
And I thought I was there to answer phones at an open house for a real estate agent in Beverly Hills, and suddenly there's a naked girl walking around the house. And my mind was blown. I've been in Hollywood less than 2 weeks. I'm in a mansion in Beverly Hills. There's a naked girl walking around, and then the realtor calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, there's a preacher's wife that's on her way to look at the house." And I told him, I said, "Oh my gosh, there's a naked lady walking around." I said, "Well, you got to keep them from bumping into each other." And it was like a Marx Brothers type of, scenario. And I really thought that my job was on the line. And suddenly it got crazier and crazier. And this director called cut. And behind a big glass mirror, there were cameras there. And as I was leaving, I signed the release form, and I was going to be paid for 4 hours. And I heard the director say, "I told that PA to stay off the 405 freeway. Without an extra pair of hands, we can't do the next setup." Mm-hmm. And I went and I turned around. And I said, "Hey, you're paying me for 4 hours. How can I help?" And it turned out that he had been in the Coast Guard. I'd been in the Navy. He was the director and executive producer. We immediately hit it off, and we had that military shorthand.
Right.
And, I just kept volunteering to go back to his office every day, not charging him, doing all the typing. And back then, everyone didn't have computers. There was no such thing as the Internet, so I could type 105 words a minute. So, the fact that I was typing those scripts and taking dictation was a very valuable service. And again, it was hidden as hard work, but I just kept showing up. And it turns out that this executive producer's father-in-law was Fred Weintraub. And Fred Weintraub had been the executive producer of Woodstock and had discovered Bruce Lee and put him in Enter the Dragon. He'd done The High Road to China, and he was really a legendary figure in Hollywood. And I just, through working for this first executive producer who served as a wonderful mentor, his name is John Axelson, I ended up getting hired as an actor and a stunt man and an assistant director and a writer on this series called The New Adventures of Robin Hood, which was Warner Brothers International Television and shot in Lithuania. And when Fred Weintraub called me into his office, he said, "Here's the deal. You have your passport, right?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Day after tomorrow, you're going to go to Lithuania. I'm not going to tell you what your job is. I'm not going to tell you how much money you're making. Just trust me. Get on the plane. You won't be sorry." And I did. And I was not sorry. And
What happened when you got there? What did you do?
I worked as a bit part actor in many episodes, and when I wasn't doing that, they had me working as a utility stuntman with a Russian stunt team. Mm-hmm. The writers all lived in Los Angeles, and they would send the scripts to Lithuania, and sometimes the scenes wouldn't quite fit what sets were built there in Lithuania, and I would assist the writers, in kind of not rewriting them, but adapting them to fit the sets. And then then he made me the first assistant director on the second unit. And then after I was done with that, I became the second assistant director on the first unit. And it was a lot of hard work, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. And when I came back from Lithuania, there was a new thing. These mini DV cameras were just coming into vogue, and I used my money to buy one of those and started working with a friend to do recreations for History Channel shows and make a little extra money on the side. And that morphed into what became known now as reality television.
Boy, you really hit it, because I was in Los Angeles many, many years before you. I got there in the late 70s when Hill Street Blues and St. Elsewhere were first getting going, because I knew Stephen Boschko, and I got some back then called 5-man underwork. But, man, I know people that would have killed to have gotten the break that you got. God bless you. You were just right place, right time, and willing to put forth the effort, and you didn't ask any questions. You just kept moving forward.
Well, and I think it really comes down to it. I came out to Hollywood wanting to be an actor, and a lot of my peers were actors. I wanted to do acting and stand-up comedy, and a lot of my peers would only work as actors. And, I was in a position where I didn't have any money, and I just basically had to look for any and every opportunity. And a lot of people, I think, who'd been set up to be a mark on a hidden camera show, they wouldn't have, they wouldn't have seen that opportunity when the director was yelling, "Now what are we going to do?"
Right.
I saw that as an opportunity. I said, "How can I help?" And it's a tough business unless you're born into it, Gary. You know that.
Yeah.
But if you work harder than everyone else, if you show up first, if you leave last, you basically outwork everyone else on the crew. You keep showing up. Other people, they're going to get tired. They're going to get overwhelmed. They'll get discouraged. And, just as that happens, you're going to get promoted based on attrition because other people give up and go back home.
Yeah, and the way that Hollywood has a tendency to go through not only in front of the camera talent, but behind the scenes, producers, directors, assistants, etc. People out there don't realize how quickly they're chewed up and spit out. And it's long days, long hours. Sometimes the money isn't always there paying your dues. Do you ever stop paying your dues, Eric, when you're behind the scenes? I mean, is there ever a day when Eric can just wake up and say, look, I don't have to push quite as hard. I don't have to pay my dues anymore. Or is that a constant battle that goes on with every new project that you take on, in particular, with New Girls on the Block that's coming along? Is it something that gets easier at time, or is the work just you understand it better, but you still have to continue to pay your dues over and over again?
You never stop paying. It's like, when you think of the term paying dues, the minute you stop paying dues, you get kicked out of the club.
Yeah.
You have to pay your dues. It's that, paying your dues means you're a member of the club. And if you think of the entertainment business as a club, if you don't keep paying your dues, you don't get to stay in the club. It does get easier in a sense because once you've learned basic storytelling as an executive producer and as a showrunner, basically you have to be able to do every job on the set.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this belief, and I really believe this. And if a cameraman drops dead, if the audio guy drops dead, if someone doesn't show up as the showrunner, I have to be able to at least do a passable job in to keep the train on the tracks and keep moving forward. You have to know everyone's job as well as your own.
Right. And yeah. And that was my mother's thing in her career. She was an interior designer. She knew how to upholster furniture. She knew how to paint furniture. She knew the ins and outs, how to make drapes, how to hang them, everything. And I think that's what's wrong with a lot of young talent today. They don't necessarily understand the work from the bottom up and they're just interested in, oh, I look good on camera, or no, that's not my job, and not realizing
well,
that,
that's a legitimate mindset too. There are certain people who are in the fortunate position, they don't have to, or they refuse to compromise their vision for what they're going to be. If if you're not born into this business, it's hard. But you look at Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt was not born into this business, and he had a vision of himself being a movie star. And if he wasn't he didn't take other show business jobs. He worked wearing a chicken costume. He took very menial work and only auditioned. And he's one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. So that is a legitimate way of doing it. If you have that laser focus and all you want to do is be an actor, there's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to be in the television business.
Yeah, I mean, so, but I also think, Eric, if you're at the beginning, when you're really struggling and you got to pay the rent. I mean, my first apartment was on La Brea and Franklin. I lived in a dump, basically, my roommate and I. And but you take anything. I mean, I was a security guard over at the Beverly Center. I worked at night so I could audition during the day. It gave me enough money so I could go to the Groundlings, which is right on Melrose Boulevard, where I could study improvisational theater. But a lot of actors won't do that. A lot of people, they just, they don't understand. At the beginning, you got to kind of do that a little. You got to show people that you're out there, and you got to show them that you've got it. And you said something extremely important. You said it a couple of times, and I want to hit on that too. There are a lot of people who do not understand that a lot of the kids that make it in, whether it's daytime dramas, movies, reality TV as either stars or, no, it's not stars, but principal actors or directors, they have relatives who have been in Hollywood in the business for many, many years. For instance, the guy who was Everybody Loves Raymond, his brother, the big tall guy, and I always forget his name, he was Milton Berle's nephew.
Yep. Yes, he was.
And you told me about my old classmate, Bob Saget. He had an uncle or a Chinaman that was in his corner when he first got to L.A.
His uncle, yeah. And there's, nepotism exists everywhere. And, I've worked very hard behind the scenes for the last 20 years or more. And, my son is 2.5 years old. And if he ever wants to get into show business, if that's his choice and his desire, he will end up being much more successful than me because I've kind of paved the way for him.
Right.
Nepotism is a fact of life. If I wanted to be a sheet metal worker, I would be probably the most successful sheet metal worker in the state of Kentucky right now because my dad was a union sheet metal worker with more seniority than anyone else in his union in Kentucky. But I chose to be an outsider and go into the entertainment industry. And, you start at the bottom. You can't take shortcuts. You learn every job. You work harder. You work longer. You work faster. You have to be enthusiastic and be professional and just keep showing up.
Yeah,
to your point, almost every I would be willing to bet that almost every person starring on a television show right now on a network series is, I'd say 80% of them have an uncle, a brother, a mother, a father, a grandfather, a grandmother who is working as a director, a producer, a showrunner, or a casting director, and has had a career for 20 or more years.
Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, I saw it left and right. You'd be introduced to this one. The only kids that I was ever introduced to was Steve Allen's sons. The one of them actually, and he was a surgeon. There are those non-show business kids from show business families who go off to do other careers. They really are not interested, or they don't really have much of the talent. But yeah, you're right. And you were talking about learning your job from the bottom up. That's what I do with this show. I produce it, and the only person who's involved in this besides me is EW, my producer. Without him, I'm lost. But for the most part, I produce the show, get the guests, and write up the questions and do everything. And when you do that, then nobody can pull the wool over your eyes to say, oh, well, I kind of did that. Oh, no, you didn't do that. This is how you do it. And I think that's what you learned being in the military. Both of us are military guys. And when you learn in the military about discipline for yourself, I think that helps you succeed in life. And it's not the secret of success, but I think it's one of the things that helps you in life is you have that military discipline to keep moving forward. Whatever gets in your way, you find a way around it or get rid of it. And you also ignore the peripheral stuff. And one of the things that I wanted to get in with you is, what is the best advice you ever got from anyone on your way up that you have imparted on other people who have asked you, how do I get where you are?
Well, I think the best advice probably came from, and it's funny, I've heard this same advice from the most successful people I know. I heard it from Milton Berle. I heard it from Buddy Hackett. I heard it from Fred Weintraub. I heard it from Rip Taylor. And they all basically said the same thing. The skills aren't necessary to start out. What's important is work ethic. Be prepared to work 12, 14, 18 hours a day. Pay attention to detail. And the cream rises to the top.
Yeah, I agree with that. Nothing gets you there. There's no shortcuts, particularly in this business. There really isn't. You could be the son or the daughter of somebody famous that'll get you through the door, but when that door closes on the other side, you better be ready to produce. So, I think hard work and dedication to your craft, whatever it may be, whether it's in front of the camera or a director or producer, is really, really important. What's been your most favorite show that you worked on? I mean, I know they're all your babies, but what about the reality shows that tickles you to no end when they're on the air? I mean, you've got the New Girls on the Block coming out real soon on the Discovery Life channel, but what is it about reality shows that really you love to do? What are the aspects of it that really get you?
What I love about reality shows, and the reality shows that I do in particular, is they're kind of the great equalizer. The reality shows is the only area of show business where anybody can become a reality star. Literally any human being on the face of the earth. Mm-hmm. Me, you, your next door neighbor, your ex-girlfriend, the guy down the street who's now dating your ex-girlfriend, your mom, your dad. Anybody has the potential to get a reality show. And when you can find those characters and tell their story and show them basically being who they are, and if it resonates, nothing feels better than that. I mean, I've had a chance, on the Dr. Phil show, I was a small cog in a very big wheel, mm-hmm. but on Little People, Big World, and, that show became part of the national conversation. It changed 2 millennia of preconceived false notions about little people and dwarfism. Most people don't realize it, but before Little People, Big World came on the air in, I believe, 2006, every single portrayal of a dwarf, from the Eastern literature of the 1001 Arabian Nights, which was written over 2,000 years ago, the Bible, Homer's Iliad, and the Odyssey, they all had dwarf characters, and every single one of them was portrayed as a mysterious creature that lived in a tree or worked as a henchman for the devil, or, they were never portrayed as normal people. Mm-hmm. And when Little People, Big World came along, no one knew what to expect, but all we did was follow them on their daily lives, and we kind of pulled back the veil of mystery, and we showed, Amy Roloff going shopping, and Matt Roloff working on the farm, and the kids going to school, and we showed that they're just like us. And mm-hmm. people started to see their own lives reflected through the lives of the Roloff family. And, I think people forget at this point that show's on track to do 300 episodes. Very few shows at all ever make it past 20 episodes. Little People, Big World has been on the air for 10 years, and they're on their way to knocking out 300 episodes. And it changed the lives of little people all around the world. That show's seen in over 150 countries. And in every country, it literally changed the lives of little people who were abused, maligned, discriminated against. And it's had an uplifting effect. And a lot of people kick reality television because they say it's tawdry and it's direct and it's a freak show. And, and I think that's true to some degree. But if you really look for it, there's shows out there that are uplifting and that do impact the national conversation in a positive way. New Girls on the Block is a show that's been in development for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And just by a strange set of timing and circumstances, the transgender issues have suddenly burst forth into the public arena, and the timing couldn't be better for this show. And I think what reality television does more than a movie or more than a scripted show is you're dealing with real people, because hate and bigotry exist because people hate an idea.
Yeah.
And it's easy to hate an abstract idea, but when you see a real person who is affected by or lives their day-to-day life, and you see they're not that different from you, all of those preconceived notions, all of those hatred can be squashed and turned, and done away with. And that's the power of television. That's the power of media. And I think that reality television today does that better than anything else.
Where did the idea for Little People, Big World come from, or did it come to you? I mean, wow.
No, I would love, man, I would love to claim credit for being the brains behind Little People, Big World. But Little People, Big World was developed by Gay Rosenthal Productions, mm-hmm. and Gay had been the executive producer for years of a show called VH1's Behind the Music. She and a man by the name of Joe Freed developed that show, and it took literally, I think it took 5 years from the time they did the first sizzle reel to mm-hmm. the pilot, and then another year or two to get the series. That show was in development for 7 years. Now, you would think mm-hmm. that a show about a family of dwarves living on a farm in Portland, Oregon, where the dad builds magic castles and tree houses and barns and drives his wife crazy, you'd think that would be a slam dunk. And it was a slam dunk, but it took 5 to 7 years to get to series.
Yeah. Do people really understand, Eric, that projects? I'm in the middle of putting together, as you know, a television project here in the Orlando area, and I got to tell you something. From the time you have the concept to the time you put the pilot together, or what people would call the sizzle reel, sometimes it takes years and years and years, in particular movies and stuff. Does that not drive you crazy? I mean, the ups and downs and the patience that you must gather in order waiting for people to make decisions?
Well, it used to drive me crazy, but, it's the cost of doing business. A good idea is always going to be a good idea. And, development is hard, man. If this were easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
And, when you from the moment you put a show in development, 2 years is considered the fast track. Mm-hmm. And a lot can happen in the world in 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
So any show that gets on the air and gets made is not, it comes from 2 years of, a minimum of 2 years of hard work and not giving up and staying focused and being able to develop that show and pitch it to 20 or 30 different networks mm-hmm. and, keep all the partners on board and keep all of the cast members on board. And, it's a miracle anything gets made because it is hard.
What is an average day like for you?
Well, when we're in the field producing a series, it's up at about 6 a.m. I go over the day schedule with my team. We start shooting around 8:30 in the morning and then just continue to shoot until 8:30 or 9 o'clock that night or even later. And then when that's done, mm-hmm. You have to start planning the next day.
Yeah. It's an all-encompassing, it's sort of like an author or a writer writing a book. You're sort of married to that project 24/7 for as long as it's necessary to get the project put out. There's a misconception that, this business, it's not just a business, it's not a job, it's not a career, it's a way of life. Mm-hmm. And in that aspect, it's not unlike the military. You are dedicated to living, a show. When you're lucky enough to have a hit, and I've been lucky enough to be attached to a lot of them, you live that show. You live it in production, and then when it's done, you live with it to 12 to 16 hours a day while you're editing it and seeing it through post-production. Mm-hmm. And
it's a lot of work, and you can live it.
When you're casting, well, you're not casting, but reality shows have, from reality show to the reality show, some very interesting characters, some very interesting people. You were talking about, of course, Little People, Big World. That's a family unit. But now we take a look at some of these other shows that are on the air, and I'm not going to mention any names, but what goes into the thought process between you and the other producers when you're thinking about putting this person on the show, like Gator Boys? I mean, the cast of Gator Boys would probably not fit with the Housewives shows, although with some of the fighting going on, that might be good basic training for those guys to go into a Housewives show. But what type of personality wants to be on a reality show to begin with?
Well, that's a broad question. That's like, I can't, who doesn't? Who hasn't at one point or another said to themselves, I think I'd like to be on a television show. I'd like to have my own show. I think everyone thinks about it at one point or another. But, what reality television is at its core is not just reality television, but all television and all film is life with all the boring stuff taken out.
Mm-hmm.
And what you look for, it really comes down to not just an interesting character, but an interesting group of characters who are thrust together and have an interesting dynamic. And, whether it's, and it's usually a subculture of some kind. Gator Boys, well, they're an amazing show. I was with that one for 54 episodes, 3.5 years, from the very, first stages of development of the sizzle reel all the way through to the last episode.
Right.
And it, these guys that, and girls who go in hands-on and capture nuisance alligators from swimming pools, construction sites, backyards, that's something you don't see every day.
No.
But the characters have to be interesting. Once you find that subculture, you have to find the right character. Deadliest Catch wouldn't be a great show if you didn't have interesting people working the decks and in the pilot house of those boats.
Mm-hmm.
So it really comes down to finding dynamic, interesting characters who aren't afraid to live, to basically live their life out loud in front of an audience of millions. And once you find that person, as long as they're games you keep playing television, you just keep doing it.
Earlier, we talked about how long it takes for a show to get on the air, from its conception to its pilot to actually for a network to buy them. What's the percentage of shows that would you say that probably are produced every year, that reality or otherwise, that probably don't even make it to that far, that don't even they may shoot a pilot and then they're shot down immediately and you never hear from them again? I mean, the competition has got to be absolutely the most fierce right now with all the reality thoughts going on.
I don't think there's any way to quantify the numbers, just me. And, let's say there's 200 production companies and reality producers that can get in a room and sell a show. Let's just say there's 200.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know that me personally, I've got like a team that I work with, and on an average month, on an average week, I've got this number on my computer, and I want to say it right. I want to give you the actual numbers. I get about 100 submissions a month.
Wow! Every
single day, somebody asks me to look at the reel or wants to know if I'll partner up with them and help them get a reality show. And I'm just one person. If you multiply that by the 200 or so people like me who have a reputation, a track record, and the representation that can get them a meeting, you'll quickly realize that that's over 20,000 sizzle reels a month being pitched, or 250,000 a year. That's 250,000 just sizzle reels in 1 year. Of the 1,200 submissions I get every year, I might choose 4 to 6 to actually get out there, pitch, and try and take the series.
What's the most outrageous? What's the most outrageous show that you've ever been pitched, or you saw the sizzle reel? You don't have to mention names, but the concept.
My favorite, I don't know if outrageous is the right word, but the favorite show that I love, that I really believe will find a home someday. I met these twin sisters who have a baton twirling school, and they're identical twin sisters. They're in their mid-30s, and they have 9 pet monkeys that live in their house. And they have baton twirling. They do competitive baton twirling, and they have 9 pet monkeys, and I call it Monkey Mamas. And, you know, it's been very close many times, but it's a show I've been developing since 2009. And I think someday it could go. There's another show that I think, you know, I would love to see get made. It's called, there's actually a team of Elvis investigators who believe he's still alive, and they're trying to find him before it's too late. Because if Elvis is still alive, he's 79 years old. And if he is still alive, he's pretty far up there, and this team wants to find him before he dies of natural causes. I would love to do a series called Finding Elvis, but I think, you know, realistically, the clock is ticking on that. I've got a team of vampire hunters who, you know, who I think would make a fascinating documentary series, reality series, just following them as they track down and do vampire investigations all around the world. I would love to see that show get made. I would love to do a reality show that just kind of follows the lives of expat Americans in different foreign countries. Right. And, you know, shows what how different their lives are and how they're the same as Americans living here in the United States. And that's just off the top of my head, a few shows. You know, right. I like to make shows that I want to watch myself.
Right. Yes. I mean, in a sense, yeah. I mean, it's why I do what I do, because I enjoy the interview process. I enjoy the research of finding out about people. How about a reality show about a boring talk show host and his 2 kitty cats?
Well, see, there you go. I mean, as dynamic as you as an individual might be, and you know, if I were going to develop a show with you, you know, and you know, just off the top of my head, if we sat and did a development meeting, I'd say, okay, how can we quantify this to reality show? Radio, you know, this is kind of close to a radio show, so the thing that pops into my head is Frasier. Who around, you know, what people in Gary's life can make him like Frasier, and are there enough? And what you have there's also a Bob Newhart element. So, you know, because Bob Newhart was surrounded by crazy characters, and his patients came in and out. So if I were going to put you in a show as a reality show, it would have to be something along the lines of Frasier or Bob Newhart. Well, thank God you'll never have to make that decision, because an ex-Jay Leno impersonator, now a radio talk show host living in Orlando, Florida. Now there's a twist for you, Eric. When we first met, you had gone through some personal changes with your family. What have some of the nature of life and what it can teach you along the way, and of course with the family member that you lost last year, what has that taught you and enabled you to keep moving forward, and what lessons have you learned about that has helped you continue on being who you are, and what have you learned from it?
Well, I think the thing, you know, my father passed away in May, and my mother passed away 6 years before that. And I think when you lose your parents, you know, especially when you kind of, you know, I left home when I was 17, and I never went back and lived in Paducah full time. I went back for a lot of visits. I still own a home there. But, you know, it changes your perspective, and you realize that, you know, life is short. Life is finite. You know, you better be doing what you want to do now, because the chance might not come later. And you know, I've been lucky, you know, that one of my best friends that I made in the Navy, he and I worked together out here in television. We're producing partners, and my best friend from 7th grade in Paducah, he's an executive producer on Intervention. He's the showrunner on that show. We kind of grown up as a business, but we grew up together from the age of 13. And my God, I wake up and realize I'm 45 years old, and it doesn't seem like 20 years since I came to Hollywood as a young guy, just, you know, starting out, and it goes so fast. So you're not what you do. Go do something else.
Yeah, I went to Hollywood, like I said, in the late 70s, early 80s, and I was lucky enough to have a connection or two. But I'm 62 years old, but I don't feel it. I'll be honest with you. I feel younger now than I did when I was in my 40s. Of course, in my 40s, I just lost my mom and dad and about 75% of my family and friends along the way. So I know what you're saying. But how does it make you cherish family a little bit more when you're like you and I, when there isn't much of it left at all? I mean, does it make you really hold on to what you have and how important family is?
Absolutely. Yeah, I went a lot of years building my career. And when you don't have much money and you don't have much time because you're struggling, you kind of lose contact with those first cousins, second cousins. And, since, I'm a little further along in my career, I've got a 2.5-year-old son and a beautiful wife. Mm-hmm. And I really try more and more to reconnect with those family members and friends that I grew up with, and spend time on the phone with them and go and visit them when I can. And, I try and pick projects. If I can't have a project that's based in Los Angeles, I try and get a project that's close to someone in my family that I have a connection with, because those people are not always going to be there.
Yeah.
At 45 years old, a lot of people say, "Oh, you're in your mid-40s, you're middle age." I'm like, well, yeah, if I lived to be 90. But, best case scenario, man, I'm halfway there.
Yeah, but you know what, Eric, I've learned about age and number because you've seen my picture and everything. And even Vicky,
Absolutely.
when I don't look 62. I have complete gray hair. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I got to tell you something. When you reach a certain age, though, there's a certain line of BS you're just not going to tolerate anymore. And in our business, folks, BS is flying around like sunshine. It's all over the place. Everybody's got a line of BS flying at you. But I got to tell you, Eric, I feel younger now than I ever have in my life. And I do cherish my friends. I keep losing them at my age. But, and you are a dear friend to me, and as Vicky is, and I can't say that enough. But, boy, you do cherish the people around you, the friendships, and the people that have been kind to you on the way up. And be kind to them on the way down, which, by the way, when I met Jackie Gleason, I asked him if that was a true statement by him, be kind on the way up because you're going to meet him on the way down. And he said, absolutely. He said, because everybody eventually hits the top and they start coming back down to earth. And you got to have a good core of friends around you for success, and the people that are negative, you got to get rid of them, I guess.
Well, and, what you also have to do is you have to set your friends up for success as well.
Yeah.
You have to throw that ladder or that rope down so that your friends who you love and trust and have known and have a history with can be there beside you, because they're the only ones that will protect you.
Yeah.
Because when you get to a certain level, there is a certain, every show is a new show and a new day, and you can't buy a hit. Nothing guarantees a hit. No. So you have to surround yourself with people that you support and that support you, so the blame game doesn't start.
What's the best part of being a producer?
The best part of being a producer, wow.
Other than being the boss.
Well, the funny thing is, when you're the producer, you're really not the boss. So, I view producing the same way I viewed my first job as a janitor. You're doing all the work that maybe no one else wants to do or really can do. But I think the best thing about being a producer is, man, this is a hard business. And I am lucky enough to be in it. I have absolutely no idea what the best part is, but I got to tell you, man, it's pretty cool to be part of a short series that reaches an audience of millions, and to have a voice in a show that impacts popular culture and becomes a part of the national conversation is an honor. And I've been lucky to work as a director, a producer, and an executive producer on Dr. Phil, Intervention, Little People, Big World, Gator Boys, and now my new show, New Girls on the Block, which I'm one of many executive producers. And my bosses developed the show over 2 years, and it's the first show about 6 transgender women. They live in the Midwest, and they're striving to gain acceptance and social equality. And a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me have put a lot more into the show, and the Discovery Life Network is the Discovery Life Network. They're the first ones to the table, to do a true, documentary reality series about transgender people. And I just, when a show, I hope that this show will be rewarded with a large audience so it can become part of the national dialogue because, as a producer, I get to be a part of that.
Yeah. And it's going to be on the Discovery Life channel. And I want to talk about that. I want to spend the last 10 minutes really going over this show because, as you said earlier, the one question I do have for you, though, if God came to you tomorrow and said you can only do one thing for the rest of your life and you can't be a producer anymore, what would it be?
Wow. I guess I would probably be a traveling musician or a stand-up comedian because I've done both and I love both, but it doesn't pay as well as being an executive producer.
No,
so
it doesn't.
I chose to be a showrunner, but if I could only, I would probably go back and do stand-up comedy or music. Probably,
and stand-up comedy is a rough life. I know oh too well. It is a tough life, and not everybody makes. Go ahead.
I was on the road for 3.5 years in mostly the Pacific Northwest doing Tribble runs. If you're in stand-up, Dave Tribble, and it's great rooms all over, Indian casinos, one-night stands, and bars, restaurants, Indian casinos, hotel showrooms and lobbies, and it's hard. And I got to a point in that where I was good. I was a solid headliner on the road, but I knew that I was not going to break through and become, one of the big ones.
Yeah.
And when I realized that I wasn't original enough, or my voice wasn't unique enough, or I wasn't going to, get that break, that's when I, focused full time on, writing and directing and producing a brand new medium called reality television. And, I've got a hell of a good career in that. Love every minute of it.
You do. I think eventually we all find what it is that God gave us as a uniqueness about ourselves. And when I started as a comic, I was up against people like Jerry Seinfeld, Robin Williams, who Robin became a friend of mine for a while I lived in Los Angeles. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for Robin Williams, I never would have been connected with the Groundlings at all whatsoever. But I mean, I was up against some really tough competition. And one day I went to Bud Friedman, who knew me pretty well, and I went back to UCLA and studied advertising and hoping to get a job in the advertising world, but that really didn't come to fruition. I just whatever it was, I think it was at the time there wasn't a job. People were getting laid off left and right. The golden age of advertising had stopped. But I think eventually God leads you in the right direction to wherever your job skills are and wherever your heart is, that's where you go if that's where He wants you. And you certainly do a fantastic job. I want to talk now about New Girls on the Block because we saw today with Indiana as well as the state of Arkansas about this religious freedom acts that some of these states are now passing left and right. And, of course, there's been a stigma on transgender as well as gay and lesbian people in the world, but transgender in particular, gay and lesbian people kind of understand that. But the transgender world is one that I think is still behind the curtain for many, many people, even if you know someone who is transgender. It is a lifestyle that is full of self-doubt and ridicule from the rest of the world. Do you hope this show sheds a lot of light on the people in the transgender community and maybe opens up some avenues where the stigma is finally lifted and people will start accepting transgender people for who they are, human beings in this world?
Well, that's absolutely the idea behind the show. I mean, like I said, I think people can hate an abstract idea. And I think less than 1% of the population knows a transgender person. 1 to 2% of the population. How can somebody hate and vilify someone they've never met or a group of people they know nothing about? And what I love about New Girls on the Block is all of the cast, all of the girls are just so brave to be willing to put themselves out there and tell their story. And, the willingness to do that, because really, if you think about it, transgender is the last frontier of social justice. And there's no understanding about what transgender is and who is transgender and what does it mean. And, you can make a documentary and air it on public television, and a couple 100,000 people will see it if they don't fall asleep. And, what we've done is just follow these girls in their daily lives with cameras, capture their ups and downs, and it's very entertaining. And, you're not beating someone over the head with a stick saying, this is what it means, be politically correct. We are basically experiencing their daily lives with them, and then people can draw their own conclusions. And I hope the conclusions that they draw are that, whether you're a transgender man or woman, just like whether you're a dwarf or African American or gay or lesbian or Muslim or whatever, subculture you might fit into, people are people. And there's a lot more that we have in common than tears us apart. And it's painful to see, people passing draconian states and legislators passing draconian laws that would codify discrimination in the year 2015. It's just wrong. And I hope in some small way our show will be part of that national conversation and a part of that dialogue, because these women are so brave to be true to who they are, and not only that, but to be true to who they are on camera. When transgender people are discriminated against at higher levels than any other subculture, than any other minority, they have higher, suicide rates than any other minority or any other subculture. And, for them to put themselves out there is brave, and I hope that it will open a lot of people's eyes.
You said earlier that how can you hate what you don't know? Well, as you well know, Eric, because, you and I are pretty well traveled, people who don't understand or who stuck in the mud back in the 30s and 40s, or maybe by their biblical faith beliefs, sometimes people hate what they don't understand because they don't want to even begin to understand it. That's a freak. Oh, that's somebody out there. And yet they don't understand that their words cause pain for a lot of people. I mean, I can imagine what it is like for a young man or a woman living in the middle of nowhere, knowing that they're gay. Now, how about doubling that up by knowing that they're in the wrong body and they were born a man, but they're really a woman? I mean, can you talk about, that has got to be one of the most frightening experiences that any human being can possibly go through, and the courage to keep moving forward and don't let society beat you down. I hope that this show is such a tremendous success for you and the cast and everybody involved, because this is a battle and a war, that needs to be won to show people that these are human beings. Just because they do something different than you and I doesn't make them any less of a human being.
And what's interesting to me about every girl on the show is that, their total commitment to being true to themselves.
Yeah.
And no one would choose to put themselves so far on the fringe of society if it wasn't so deeply enmeshed in their being. And, and when you're true to yourself, there's a certain freedom that comes with that. And these girls are all willing to pay the price to be who they are. And I hope we as a society recognize that and reward them for it, because they're just, to go from Gator Boys to New Girls on the Block is like, amazing to me. And I didn't know anything about the transgender community when I started this show, and my eyes have been open to it, and it's changed my life for the better. And I hope that everyone that watches the show will have the same experience that I have. Because
it's called New Girls on the Block, and it's on the Discovery Life channel. When is it? Saturday, April 11th?
Saturday, April 11th, and there's 5 episodes airing every Friday beginning April 11th, Discovery Life channel. I hope everyone will check it out, set your DVRs, and make it some appointment programming, because it's a story that needs to be told. It's a show that deserves to be on the air and find a strong core audience. and it answers a lot of questions and kind of pulls back that veil of mystery and secrecy without being demeaning or having a political agenda. And that's the beauty of reality television, one of the things I love so much about my career.
Eric, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. Eric Streit, who's also become a very good friend of mine, and he's going to be producing my new reality show, what not to do in television and radio. Eric, thank you so very, very much. Hang on the line for a second. I'm going to call you once we get off the air, but thank you so much for taking the time. You're producer of New Girls on the Block, which will be starting April 11th on the Discovery Life channel. Please tune in. It's all about the transgender community. Thank you, Eric, very much. And I just want to say thank you to everybody out there for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us here on The Express. And until next week, please take care of yourselves. EW, thank you. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.